Hey guys, welcome to your 8th C# tutorial, and in this tutorial we'll be talking about repetition, iteration, or looping control structures. It means the same thing. Again, the technical term is iteration, but most people either call it repetition, or looping is actually the most common type. And I'm going to keep this list of the 4 different types up here just so I keep it as a checklist for myself and so you can know the technical term of it. I'm going to go ahead and start with precondition looping, which is you use a while statement. Actually, I need to declare a variable here first. Int x equals, let's do 0. Okay. While x is less than 5, x plus plus, and I'm actually going to do more than one line of code, so like I told you last time, if you want to do more than one line in a loop, you've got to use your curly braces. Console.writeLine x. Excuse me. Now, what this is going to do is while x is less than 5, it's going to go through these codes. It literally does what it says. While x is less than 5, it's going to add 1 to x and then print it out. And I actually want it to print out before it adds it. Shoot. Okay. Oh man, what did I do? Cut. Paste. Okay. It's going to add 1 to x after printing it out. So first it should go 0, add 1, so then x is 1. X is still less than 5 because it's 1. And then it's going to print out 1. Then it's going to add 1, it'll be 2. 2 is less than 5, so then it'll print out 2. Make it 3. 3 is less than 5. Print out 3. Make it 4. 4 is less than 5. Print out 4. And then it'll make it 5. And then once it gets up here, it'll say 5 is less than 5. Let's go back out of this loop. So then we'll do a console.readLine. Okay. And then I'll put just one more console.writeLine just for the heck of it, just so you can see the final product, x. Okay. So this should print out 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. 4 and 5, sorry. So let's see. Oh, I forgot 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So now if I made this 2, what do you think it's going to do? 2, 3, 4, 5. And you are correct. 2, 3, 4, 5. That is precondition looping. Now let me type some code for postcondition looping. And it's exactly the same thing, except there's one little trick. And for postcondition looping, I'm pretty darn sure that you absolutely have to have curly braces no matter what. While y is less than 5. Okay, that's not supposed to say yield. Y. No, stop it. Okay. And let's do int y equals 1. Now let's just 0. Okay. And then we'll do a console.writeLine again, just so we can see what's happening as it happens, and then do y plus plus. Okay. So for this one's precondition, and this one's postcondition. The main thing with these is that when you're doing a precondition, it goes before it does anything, it checks to make sure that your x value that this is true, which it is right now because 0 is less than 5, so it comes out to be true. It's another one of those Boolean things that's coming back. So x is less than 5, so then it'll go through. But the thing with the do while is that it always goes through at least one time. A do while statement, what is this telling me? Why is that doing that? I don't know. A do while statement runs at least one time because it'll go through, it'll say, okay, so I'm going to do this, and then even if we made x equal to 6, it'll say x equals 6, so I'm going to do this, and it'll get down here and says 6 is less than 5. Nope. So then it'll go through and say, okay, console.readLine. So a do while statement goes through at least once. Now you're thinking, well, why would I want to use a do while instead of a while statement? Because it does the exact same thing, except it goes through at least one time. Well, I do believe that ATMs, the code inside an ATM machine, uses do while instead of while, because it needs to go through at least one time, otherwise no one's going to be able to get their money. So that's a good way to use a do while, and there are several other times when you might want to use a do while. Can't really think of any off the top of my head, but I have used them before, and they are definitely useful when you need them. So let's go ahead and run this. I'm thinking I need a semicolon here. This is another thing. If any of you guys are learning this after coming out of like Java or C or C++, I know that in Java you don't need a semicolon after this, but in C or C++ you might, so it might be kind of similar to you, but I'm pretty sure in Java you don't need a semicolon after the do while statement. So let's go ahead and run it again. Okay, so it prints out x equals 0, so then it's going to print it out, make it 1, go through again like I said before, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then here, see, it does the reason it didn't go to 5 is because it says do. Okay, so it's going to print out 0, make it 1. So it goes to 1 first, and then 1 is less than 5. Let's go through, print it out 1, 2. 2 is less than 5. Go through 3, 2, 3, and then 3 is less than 5. Let's go through again, print out 3, make it 4. 4 is less than 5. Let's print it out again. So then it prints out 4 when it goes back through. Then it says 5. And then it gets here and it says 5 is less than 5. No. So then, instead of printing out the exact same thing as the while, the do while prints out one number less, because it checks to see whether it's less than 5 after it's already made the number 5. So that's why it does that. Actually, no, that's wrong. I added this in here, which is why it does it. So in this particular case, the while statement and the do while would do the exact same thing. I just lied to you, regard what I just said for the past like 30 or 45 seconds. So that's why that does that. Now, the most common looping that I honestly use is the fixed iteration. Fixed repetition, fixed iteration, fixed looping, whatever. It's actually called loops. Really, fixed iteration is the only thing you really refer to as a loop, per se, because it is a serious loop in the fact that you can't control how much it is after it's already started. So the main thing about this is that if you actually take a computer science class, they'll usually teach you that you should declare all of your accumulator, was what this is called, because every time you go through the loop, let me go ahead and finish writing this code and then explain it. Let's see, just your console.writeLine. Let's just print out x. That's simple enough. Okay, so it's going to say, okay, so x equals 1. Let's go ahead and print out console.writeLine x. It's going to print out 1. Then when it's done with this whole for statement, it will add 1 to x. And then it only goes through this code one time. This is called an accumulator. X is your accumulator because it accumulates a value that it compares this. So then x equals 2, and it'll go through and say, okay, 2 is still less than or equal to 5. And then it'll print out 2. Then it'll add 1 to it, say, okay, now it's 3. Go through the loop again. 3 is still less than or equal to 5. So let's go ahead and print out console.writeLine x. So it's going to print out 3. Then it'll make it 4 because it's doing x plus plus. Go through and say, okay, 4 is still less than or equal to 5. Let me go ahead and be consistent. It'll say 4 is still less than or equal to 5, so let's print out the 4. So then it'll add 1 to 4 and say 5. Okay, now 5 is not less than 5, so let's skip out and do this console.readline thing here. So let's see what happens when I compile this, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, because it starts with 1 and ends with 4. Now, and then another way I can do this, let's make this like 10 this time. Okay, so you can actually make this x plus equals 2. So then it'll add 2 every time instead of just 1, and it'll skip every other number. So then it'll do 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Which is nifty, depending on what you need to use it for. You might be like, well, if it's an accumulator, I don't need that. But if you're doing graphics or something, then you might want some object to move a certain amount of pixels, and if you want it to move faster than just 1 pixel for every a millisecond or whatever, then that is a very good way to have it do that. So there's that. And again, if you want to do more than one line of code inside of your for statement, you have to use your little curly braces there. And so I could actually print this out 2 or 3 times now and just show you how that works. Okay. So 1, 1, 1, 3, 3, 3, 5, 5, 5, 7, 7, 7, 5, 9, 9, 9. Okay. Now I can actually compare x to another number. Let's do x is less than 15. Okay. So, or y equals 15, I'm sorry. So now for x equals 1, int x equals 1, it's declaring it x equals 1. Now, while x is less than y, which is 15, it's going to print these lines and then add 2 every time it does that. So it's going to go and do the 1, 1, 1, 3, 3, 3, 5, 5, 5, 7, 7, 7, 9, 9, 9, 11, 11, 11, and 13, 13, 13. Because that's what I told it to do. I think that's just about it on the fixed repetition. If you really need to watch the video again, go ahead, because repetition, iteration, looping, whatever you want to call it, is probably even more important than those if statements that I taught you last time. I'm not really sure. It kind of depends on what you're going to use them for. But you definitely need to know all 6 of your different types of control structures. And I'm going to teach you the 7th one along with the arrays. And the array loop really isn't much different than the for loop. It's very similar, but there are certain aspects of it that would make it confusing to teach without you knowing what an array is quite yet. So that's going to come later. And so next time I'm not sure what I'm going to teach you. I got to make a lesson plan, so I'll see you then.